Whoa! Okay, that was a bad mistake. I absolutely love barbecue and brisket and burnt ends and all of those delicious things. But what I don't love is that it's usually full of sugar and all kinds of sugary sauces. It typically is very expensive because you have to buy a whole brisket or how do you even cook a whole brisket? And a lot of people don't have a smoker. So we're gonna solve all of those problems today. And we made poor man's burnt ends using a chuck roast in my oven without any sugar. I'm telling you, nobody is gonna know that you didn't cook this overnight in a smoker and that this was done in your oven. Look at that. Ooh, hot, hot. Look how tender and juicy this is. Before we go any further, I want to let you know that this video is sponsored by Element, and I am so excited because their newest flavor, lemonade salt, is available for everybody right now. Our kids love this. I already have so many different ideas of how we are going to use the lemonade salt. I love an unsweetened iced tea occasionally, and I'm going to mix the lemonade with the iced tea and make myself a sugar-free Arnold Palmer this summer. I already know that's happening. We're gonna make popsicles. My kids earlier today took half a pack of the raspberry and a half a pack of the lemonade salt, and they made themselves a raspberry lemonade. The kids are obsessed with it. I think there's so many other ways that you could use this. Let me know in the comments if you could think of any other ways, but it is going to be so popular. I'm so pumped. I hope you can try it. If you are somebody though who avoids all sweeteners, all natural flavors, and are really sensitive to that, you could stick to the unflavored version of their electrolyte, which is just sodium, magnesium, potassium. Literally, that's it. This is what I drink every day, and then I just use the flavored version like as a special treat occasionally. But this is the staple in my daily routine in order to keep me hydrated. If you want a free sample pack of Element electrolyte packets, you can get that with any purchase. They have a deal for all my subscribers. You just go to drinkelement.com/LauraSpath, and they're gonna send you that free sample pack with your purchase. You can grab one of my favorite flavors with the link below. Thanks to Element for sponsoring this video. I found this chuck roast on sale for $6.99 a pound. I can often find them a lot cheaper in my area, $4.99 a pound occasionally, and I'll usually stock up when that happens. But today we are gonna be using this big piece of chuck roast. It is 2.78 pounds, and that is going to feed my family for dinner tonight. If you watch my channel regularly, you know that the chuck roast is one of my favorite cuts of meat because it is so versatile. You can use it and eat it like a steak, or you can cook it in a variety of ways. I have a video on this channel talking about the versatility of the chuck roast overall and explaining how you can pull off this bottom part of the chuck roast, and it's just the chuck eye steak. So go check out that video. And also I have used a chuck roast and made some braised shredded beef tacos with some cheese shells. Like, there's so much variety. Today we are gonna go the barbecue method, and we are gonna turn this into some delicious burnt ends inside. The first thing I'm gonna do is preheat my oven to 250 degrees. Depending on how much time you have, you could go down to 225 degrees. Lower and slower is gonna give you more tender meat. You also could speed things up a little bit and do the whole thing at 275. We're gonna split the difference today since it's mid-morning and we're gonna have this for dinner tonight, and we'll put it at 250. Also, in order to speed up the cooking process, I'm gonna take this whole chuck roast and cut it into 4 pieces. That's gonna give me a little bit more of the bark on the outside of the meat. There's more surface area for the seasonings to be, and also just for the heat to start caramelizing that. In terms of seasonings and sauces, there is a wide variety of things that you could use for this recipe depending on how well you tolerate seasonings. Super basic, a little tallow, regular salt is gonna be the most simple, perfect carnivore way. Doing some bacon grease and a little smoked salt is gonna add so much of that smoky flavors indoors because we're not going outside and using the smoker. Our family does love some spices and occasionally even a sugar-free barbecue sauce. So I love to use adobo and smoked paprika on pretty much any type of beef that we cook ever. And today we're gonna get fancy, and you guys know I've used this seasoning a lot in other recipes, but the Red Rock barbecue seasoning from Redmond's, it's just gonna give me that traditional barbecue flavor without adding a lot of sugar or a bunch of other junk in the seasoning blend. I'm gonna use my tallow for a binder so that the seasonings all stick to the meat better. You could use bacon grease like I mentioned. You also, the traditional barbecue method is to use some yellow mustard. So depending on how well you tolerate seasonings, you could use that mustard as a binder to hold all the seasonings onto the meat. I'm gonna make things easy on myself and use a disposable pan for cooking today. You could use, and I have like a big roasting pan that I would cook a turkey in with like a wire rack in the bottom. If you were gonna make a really large batch of this for a huge crowd, you could do 2 or 3 chuck roast at the same time, and you could use one of those big roasting pans. I do want to put a metal rack in the bottom, and I have this really nice small size metal rack that's gonna go in the bottom here to keep the meat off the bottom so it's not going to be like stewing and steaming in the juices that are created. I wanna try to get a nice crust in the oven on the outside of that meat, and so having that meat sitting up on top of the rack is going to get better circulation, it's gonna cook more evenly, and it's gonna prevent it from getting soggy or cooking unevenly. Once I have covered the meat in a generous amount of seasonings, I'm going to insert my meter probe into 2 different chunks of meat. I just wanted to keep an eye on it. I'm using my meter duo today, but any of the meter probes would work. Even one would be plenty. I just figured this way with the duo has 2 different probes. I could keep an eye on if there's any difference in temperature from the front of my oven to the back of my oven and just rotate things around if necessary. But the meter probe is going to tell me exactly when this is going to be finished, when I should move on to the next step of adding the caramelization, when I should cover it. It's going to keep an eye on it. Cooking a piece of meat like this and having it turn out right is all about internal cooking temperatures. We want to know when to cover it based on the internal cooking temperatures. Time is going to vary so much based on the size of the meat, the size of your chunks, the temperature of your oven, you know, what's going on in your house. So we want to make sure that we're keeping a close eye on the internal temperature of this so that it turns out perfectly. While that is cooking in the oven, I'm just going to go back to work and keep an eye on everything from the app, and it's gonna let me know when we gotta move to the next stage, which is creating that like gorgeous, perfect sauce on top of it that's gonna like make everything tender and delicious. You also could do this, I think, in the crock pot. You could do it in your Instant Pot maybe. You definitely could do this in the smoker outside. I have done that quite a bit, but I think the oven is probably the most hands-off method, which is what I was looking for today. Depending on when you're watching this, you should know that Meter is having an amazing Father's Day sale right now, where on their website, Meter probes are up to 30% off. And if you order before June 8th, you can get guaranteed shipment delivery by Father's Day. Obviously, I use this all the time, so you don't have to be a father to enjoy it. It does work in the oven, the air fryer, the crock pot, the smoker, on the grill. If you get the Meter Pro, it's good up to 1,000 degrees external temperature. So straight on a hot grill is the perfect way to do it. And it's just gonna guide me. Like cooking meat, there is no recipe for that, and that's why I think it can be overwhelming for a lot of people. But using the Meter, having the app guide you, gives you that recipe to understanding internal cooking temperatures. And so then you don't have to worry about these expensive cuts of meat being ruined, and they turn out perfectly every time. So make sure you go check out their Father's Day sale, and it's the perfect gift for every meat lover cooker in your life. It has been about 3.5 hours, and this smells so good. Look at that steam coming off of this. I like moved my air fryer over here, and I set something on top of my air fryer. Look at this gorgeous meat. When the bark or the coloring on the outside got about where I wanted it to be, so around 165 degrees internal temperature, I just threw a piece of foil over it. I didn't want it to dry out, and I didn't want it to get too charred on the outside. But look at this, for being in the oven, look at this gorgeous bark that I have on top. It is now then at 190 degrees internal temperature. So I am going to pull out my probes. We're gonna cube this up even smaller into basically bite size, like a 1 or 2 bite piece, and then we're gonna create our sauce. This actually tastes delicious just the way that it is. It's tender, a little bit chewy, but super fatty and juicy. You could eat it just like this if you didn't want to wait. But if we want that true like brisket burnt ends texture, we got to cut it up and then put it back in the oven for an hour. Okay, we're gonna try to do this somewhat quickly so I can hurry up and get this back in the oven, but I have all of my meat cubed up. And then inside of my tray, I'm going to take out the rack at this point because I do want to utilize all of those juices and all of those drippings that are down in there. And so I'm gonna put all of my meat back in this tray and give it like a good stir. One of the most important steps is I put an entire stick of butter in here, mixed it with the juices that were on the bottom. This is going to give us that like beautiful caramelized sauce. If you wanted to keep it 100% strict carnivore, I would stop at this step. You could have kept your seasonings simple, and then we have butter and its own juices, and we're done. This is 100% carnivore. This is gonna go back in the oven for 1 more hour, and then it's going to be done. Depending on how well you tolerate seasonings, I love garlic and I love a little bit of barbecue sauce occasionally, especially my kids love the barbecue sauce. So I'm going to take some garlic paste and or you could use fresh garlic, but we're gonna give a little bit of garlic to go in here. I don't like to use garlic powder early on because that can oftentimes burn. And so I didn't want to have that burnt garlic taste, but I'm going to mix around this garlic. And then I do love some sugar-free barbecue sauce occasionally. Kinder's has a 0 sugar roasted garlic version that's really good. I'm not going to use this one because I just added garlic. This one says that it has 5 carbs per 2 tablespoons, but the carbs that it comes from allulose, which your body does not really process allulose in the same way that it does other types of sugar and fibers, and it's questionable, but you obviously have to decide how you're going to react to things like allulose and other sweeteners. Another type of clean barbecue sauce that we like is the G. Hughes barbecue sauce. You could just get this one at Walmart. It has 2 carbs per serving, and it is using, it has a small amount of sucralose is listed as the last ingredient. So because it's so low in carbs and it doesn't have any gluten in it or a bunch of other junky fillers, then I'm not really that, I'm comfortable using it. So I am just like, I'm not even gonna use a ton. Like I'm gonna, think about 2 carbs per 2 tablespoons. So what was that? Like maybe a half a cup at the most. Just to have a little bit of drizzle, get that flavor in there. I'm gonna put this back in the oven, like I said, for an hour, and then I will stir it about every 20 minutes. That was almost a disaster. I kept the oven at 250 degrees uncovered with the sauce and the butter for 1 hour, and then for 2 or 3 minutes right at the end, I put it on broil just to add a nice bubbly crust on top, but watch it so it doesn't burn. Ugh. Here we go. Look at the final result. This is a beautiful tray and a bubbly hot meat, and I pulled out a few pieces to cool down just so I would eat them. I'm gonna let the rest of it sit until my family gets home from jiu-jitsu in like 15 minutes, and then we'll have dinner together as a family. But this is so, look at that. Ooh, hot, tender and juicy, and so much good fat in there. And look at all that crust on the other side. Ugh. Okay, I better stop or I'm not gonna wanna eat dinner tonight. For a side dish, my kids will probably have a vegetable, maybe, but we'll just eat this tonight since it's late for us and we don't tend to eat a lot late at night. If I was doing this for lunch, I definitely would have another meat to go along with it, probably something like chicken wings or even like a pork chop would be like a leaner way to balance out the richness of this, but I'm gonna use this sauce on everything. You also could make this on the weekend and it's gonna reheat really well because you could microwave it, and then all of this delicious sauce and fat and butter is gonna keep it nice and moist. So if you try this, or if you've already tried this from a previous time that I've shared, let me know what you think. Don't be afraid of barbecue recipes because you think that you don't have a smoker or you know, you think that they're full of sugar, there's a way to work around and make it work for your life. Thanks for watching.